We are discussing another continuation of the leadership of Nehemiah. Like we said in part 1, Nehemiah was a marketplace leader. In other words, he was not a priest, he was not a prophet, he was a guy involved, like many of us, out there in the marketplace. And we see his leadership lessons very relevant to others who are involved in the marketplace. And one of the things we learned from him is the fact that he was interested not just in helping the people reconstruct the wall, physical reconstruction, the needs that he gave to the king, but he went beyond that and got involved in social reconstruction, wanting to help people to relate better with one another, the rich with the poor. But then thirdly, he was also got involved in spiritual reconstruction, helping these people to go back to worship and how to relate with God. And like we mentioned, it will be important for you as a leader to be involved in that triumvirate. First, the mission organization. Work at it. Ensure you get you get to do the mission organization. But number 2, the people you work with, help them to relate better with one another, to enjoy their workplace, and to be excited about what they are doing. That is social reconstruction. But then thirdly, I know you are not there as a pastor, but find ways of ensuring that this team of people are worshippers. They are talking to God. Some of the organizations these days are looking for chaplains who can come to the marketplace and help them to actually worship God. So I think it will be important for you to learn from Nehemiah. That's not enough for you to do the mission of the organization. You also must think about the people working for that mission. And you must also think about how they relate with God. Next, we learn from Nehemiah that if you are going to be a good leader, you must also be a good reader. Because we read from Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 8 and 9. Remember the instruction he is telling God. You gave your servant Moses. If you are not faithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I'll gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. What is that telling us? He was a reader. Although he was a very senior security person in the superpower called Persia. In fact, the king would not drink anything until he had approved it. He actually read widely. He seems to have read the book of Deuteronomy. He was a wide reader. Maybe he had also read the book of Jeremiah. A good leader must be a good reader. And it will be important for you to ask yourself, is that what you are doing? Are you gathering information widely so that what this organization, your organization is doing can be related with what's happening outside? Do you bother with the newspaper? At least even if you don't read it, do you have somebody summarize it for you? You must understand what is socially happening around you, because the environment will affect your organization. Let me ask you, you are dealing with the clients. Do you read about what they do? Or do you just sell their raw material to them, and then you have no idea what's happening to them? By reading about those industries which are dealing with you, you understand the thing when things are going wrong, that it will soon affect your company. You cannot call yourself as a good leader if you're just interested in reading issues about your organization, but you're not interested in reading widely and understanding, so that you understand your environment. Next, a good leader, we learn, is a family man. We see in the book of Nehemiah chapter 1 verse 2, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah and some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. It is Hanani, his brother, who set the whole ball rolling. Without Hanani, there would never have been the book of Nehemiah. We would not have known Nehemiah, this leader. But because he had remained in touch with his mother's son, his brother, When things happen in Jerusalem, he has somebody who can tell him what's happening in Jerusalem. And because he now knows what is happening in Jerusalem, he is able to get affected and pray about it and go to the king. Ask you the question, have you learned that you cannot be doing well alone, that you need to carry your relatives along with you? You need to talk to your brothers and your sisters in such a way that they get interested in you. The moment they're interested in what you are doing, if they hear something that affects your industry, that affects your company, they'll talk about it. They'll give you information. The same way Hanani knew what his brother was interested in and gave him details. You need to remain in touch with your children. There's information your children will get to know that can help you in your leadership. You need to remain in touch with your spouse, because your spouse is interested in you. She will certainly collect information that can help you in your work. A good leader, Nehemiah teaches us, remains connected with his family. He never gets too senior for his family. Like this brother Hanani doesn't seem to be big, but bigness is not the issue. He is your mother's son. Because of that, God uses Hanani in order to direct the future of Nehemiah. Next, we learn that a good leader knows how to manage his boss. In Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 2 says, I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. You know, if you do not know how to manage your bosses to interfere with your work, you can never be a leader of high achievement if your board does not trust you. Every time you put a new proposal, they are suspicious. They start fighting it. And you wonder why you are not progressing. Because you have concentrated in leading your followers, never learned how to manage your managers, your bosses. And I think it's important to understand that Nehemiah was different. He knew the king so well. He knew the good time to talk to him is when the queen is around, because maybe he had watched and observed that the queen has a soft heart for him, and therefore she's likely to encourage the king to agree with Nehemiah. Number two, just watch. He addresses the king very honorably. He says, "May the king live forever," because he doesn't mean it. He knows the king will die. But there's a way of talking that shows respect, that makes you have a good relationship with your leaders. The moment your leaders trust you, they will release you rather than micromanage you. The moment they don't trust you, they will micromanage you, and you might never achieve your purpose. Every board paper you write will be questioned and torn into pieces, and you discover you are just, like they say in my vernacular, you are beating the water. You can never produce porridge if there's no maize. It's important to ask yourself, have you learned how to have a good relationship with your leaders? That does not mean you don't disagree with them. It does not mean you don't say no. Don't say no to your board when they misdirect you. If what they are telling you does not honor God, if what they are telling you is not for the good of the organization, you know the organization better, you can say no. But the way you say it is so respectful. They can see clearly there must be something serious with this decision we are making, because we know this guy trusts us, this guy honors us. Create a relationship with your leadership that will make them interfere with you less. Next, we learn from Nehemiah, a good leader is an action-oriented person. You know what in Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 5 teaches us about his action orientation. He has come to build a wall, the wall he must build, and he does not allow distractions. People try to distract him, he sticks with the wall. There are too many leaders so involved in grapevine information, they can't concentrate on their work. And I think it's important to understand here that if you are really going to accomplish anything as a leader, you must be an action-oriented person. No philosopher ever did anything, accomplished anything. No planner ever accomplished anything. You know, if you just spend your time planning and never putting the plan into action, there'll be a problem. So what are we learning? It's important for you to have an action plan. What's an action plan? Clarifying where you want to go, your vision and mission, clarifying what strategies you can use, and I think that will be important. And then clarifying the timelines, and then the resources that are required. That's what you mean by an action plan. It helps you to see what will come before what, that you don't waste your time with things that can be contradicted later. Now that's what we are talking about. If you want to be a good leader in a marketplace, you must be somebody who thinks through. Don't enter into a project before you have written down an action plan for the project, so that you can see the loopholes, I think see the things that need to be sorted out, so that you are able to organize yourself better. Then we learn that a good leader is not surprised by opposition. In Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 10 we read, when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard about this, they were very much disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. You know, it didn't take Nehemiah long to realize that the neighboring tribes did not want Jerusalem to be rebuilt. They wanted Israel to remain like that, unknown, disorganized, of no impact. And so the moment they saw there is somebody new organizing the Israelites, rebuilding the wall, fight, enmity started immediately. But you see, he was ready for them. These enemies tried several things, but each time he was ready for them. A lot of people get very surprised because they never expect opposition. You can't be a good leader who cannot imagine things going wrong. You cannot be a good leader who cannot be ready for enmity and opposition. That's human. It should be expected. So when it finally comes, you say, I knew it would come. You had thought through, if this kind of opposition comes, this is the way I'll deal with it. If this type of opposition comes, this is the way I'll deal with it. And so you are not in shock. You know, if you have never imagined any opposition, the moment it comes, instead of reacting to it, responding to it, what will happen? You'll be in shock, unable to do anything, and you'll be a walkover by your enemies. We are learning from Nehemiah. Be ready for opposition. Be aware it will come. If it doesn't come, that's okay. If it comes, you are ready for it. You know, but more importantly, a good leader knows how to handle the enemies. Do not allow the enemies to misdirect you. You know, we continue to read about Sanballat, and he says, but when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you are doing? They asked, are you rebelling against the king? Remember, you have to learn how to handle them. These are people with strategies. One strategy they actually used was to discourage them. Whatever you are building, even rabbit can knock it down. The moment you start thinking, yeah, what are we doing? You stop doing your work. And there are many people who get discouraged because the enemies put seeds of discouragement. You need to be ready. Are you sure you're doing the right thing? Are you sure you're doing the right way? Then when the enemy tries to discourage you, you just ignore him. How can you expect an enemy to support you? It should not be surprising they're discouraging you. Then the other thing they tried to say, we'll report you to the king. And just called their bluff. Says, you go to the king and tell him. What they didn't know is that he has a letter from the king that authorized him to rebuild Jerusalem. So he says, you can go right ahead. You need to be the kind of a person who has the ear of the board. Your enemy don't start saying, we're going to report you to the board. How do you handle that? You need to know how to handle such matters. The third thing they tried is to kill him. They told him, you come to Ono, some place called Ono, and then he says, I'm not coming. I'm too busy building the wall. And then the Bible tells us, I knew they wanted me to, not for my good, but so that I could be killed. Another thing they tried is to start saying, we are going to say that you are in trouble. Come to the temple. Now, not go to Ono, come to the temple. He knew the moment he enters the temple and he's not a Levite, he will be told he has decided to contaminate the temple. then his name will be in trouble. So that way, when they can discount his character because of not being a good worshiper, because of doing things that don't honor God, they will make the followers not want to follow him. So you need to be very careful with your character, with whatever it is you are doing. That's way to handle your enemy. And you need to learn how to handle them. Be ready for them, but also know how to handle them. They'll be there, but they cannot stop you achieving what God has set out for you. If you are number one, you are ready for them. Number two, God gives you the wisdom on how to handle them. But the other thing that we learn about Nehemiah, he was a good communicator, a very good communicator. You know, in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 11 and 12, we read, I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. What's to be a good communicator? Number one is to be simple. Number one is to be clear. But that will not happen if, unlike Nehemiah, you do not research your facts. So it is true he heard from Hanani who was happening in Jerusalem, but it doesn't go by reported speech. He himself investigates what's the problem in Jerusalem. For 3 days, he's in Jerusalem. He's not even mentioning what he has come to visit, what he's coming to do. He does not even mention to them that he's their new governor. He just keeps low. And when he wants to go around the world, he doesn't create a scene. He just picks a few people, and with one horse only, the others walking along. He goes through the whole world investigating. Finally, he calls a meeting of all the Jews, and he starts communicating. He does not tell them, I have heard. He says, I have seen. So he communicates firsthand. My friend, so if you have to be clear and simple in your communication, you must get information first before going to people. Do not be the kind of guy who relies on the grapevine, always allowing people to come. They'll mislead you. They'll tell you, no, so and so doesn't like you, so and so. No. In fact, even if you are taking over from someone, do not inherit his enemies. Don't allow that he tells you, no, that man doesn't like us, that man doesn't like us. Listen, but verify for yourself, exactly like Nehemiah. Do not rely on rumors. The moment people realize that you investigate, they'll stop giving you rumors. Because, yeah, he'll listen to me, but he's going to countercheck. And then it will embarrass me when he's able to discover I was lying. So communication requires investigation, and then requires, in the process, clarity. Talk to the right people at the right time for the right information, and you'll be a good communicator. There's no way you'll be a good leader when what is in your head cannot enter the head of the followers clearly. You'll not be a good leader if what is in your head cannot enter the head of your bosses and the board clearly. You must be good communication. So if it is something that you need to work on it. If, for example, you are in a place where you are leading people in Swahili, study Swahili, improve your language. If you are working in a country, you are from English-speaking Africa, you are working in a country that's French-speaking, learn French, at least enough to understand what they are saying. You must be able to understand information, then communicate better with them. That will be important. Next, we are learning from the story of Nehemiah that your biggest asset is your character. You know, Nehemiah has just come from nowhere. It's true he has a letter from the king, but from the way he approaches people, he is able to create trust. So his biggest asset was not money. His biggest asset was character. In fact, at one time he's talking and saying, people are doing that, but I'm doing like this. His own life was a life that, number one, was without blemish. Number two, was a life that lived in the fear of God. Number three, that was interested in the people. That way he created a character that people knew, this guy is here for our good. So we want to do things in the right way so that we can accomplish, because the project is not for him. He had a very senior post back in the headquarters. The project is about us. Whatever he is doing is for our good. And I think that will be That will be very, very important for us to have in mind. So if you want to be a good leader, you must be careful about your character. Do not think that you have one character for the office, another character for home, another character for church. No. The people in the office, I have contact with some of your children, have contact with some of your brothers, have contact with some of the people in the church. So you see somebody here smiling, but he knows what you did to your wife yesterday. You cannot be compartmentalized. You must be somebody integrated. That's what we call integrity. Integrity is what we see is what we get. What we hear is who you are. You are integrated. You are one person, integrated character. And when you do that, what will follow? People trust you. Because they trust you, they will follow you. Because they are following you, you'll be able to go faster to the better place you are taking this group. Because they understand the vision you have for their good, and they will support you because they trust you. All that requires investment in character. If you really have a good character, you'll be predictable. They know you. These are your values. These are your beliefs. If you have a good character, you'll be consistent. You don't behave this way now and this way another time, and therefore they will be able to work with you. You'll be part of a team that they enjoy working with. I think the other thing you have to learn is Nehemiah told Sanballat and Tobiah, the Lord, the God of heaven, will help us. You know, Tobiah, once he realizes that he cannot stop the war, the next thing is he is asking to come and participate in the war. There gives us a chance to see what the values of Nehemiah. He says, I rely on God. We may be weak, we may not be powerful, we may not be rich like you, but the God, I'm not even relying on the king, the God of heaven will help us. My friend, as a good leader, anybody you rely on, the board, the subordinates, your management team, can fail you. They could even sometimes not be trustworthy. But there's a God in heaven you can trust all the time and any time. Do you want to work on your own? Then you can very easily fail. Why don't you first of all consult God to be sure that God wants you to do what you are doing? Number two, ask God how he wants you to do it. Number three, ask God what the final product will be. Then ask him to walk with you. It's Moses who said, unless you go with me, I'll not go in this project. Why don't you come to where you know that unless you rely on God, you'll never be a good leader? There will be challenges that will bring you down. You may suffer from burnout. You may end up with overstressed. You may end up collapsing in depression. But when you become a leader who is totally dependent on God, then you'll be the kind of a person who is going to always be strong, bounce back, irrespective of what challenges come your way. A good leader recognizes his work in a team. You know, in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 5, verse 7 to 8, we read, Eliashib the high priest and his fellow priests went to work and built the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the tower of the hundred, which they dedicated, and as far as the tower of Hananel. I pondered them in my mind, and then accused the nobles and officials. I told them, you are charging your own people interest. So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, as far as possible, we have bought back our fellow Jews who are sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us? They kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. A good leader organizes his team well. Number one, he organizes his work. That's what we read earlier. Eliashib had his own section. Then the next person, his own section, division of labor. A good leader divides work. Remember, he remembers that Everybody's work is nobody's work. So a good leader is a good has organizational skills. But number two, a good leader organizes a team. You don't just organize the people, you organize the team. So organizational skills is one of the basic requirements for good leadership. And because he is orderly, it actually gives him influence. Because everything he does is systematic and orderly. It actually gives him influence. But I think the thing I like most is Nehemiah sets an example. A good leader sets an example. Nehemiah told the people, I also led, but don't take any interest. In other words, he was telling these people who are exploiting their fellow Israelites, why can't you take my example? I'm also leading, but I don't ask people to pay me interest. I don't exploit them. Take my example. I want to tell you, don't expect that people will do different from you. If you say that nobody should smoke, you as a leader should be the one to set an example. If you say people should be in the office by 8, you should set an example by being there by 8. My friend is giving himself, Nehemiah, the leader, is giving himself as an example for leadership. Nehemiah told them, I also led. First, the word of God does not allow you to sell brothers. That's what he is arguing. But most importantly, follow my example. In other words, I'm telling you to do what the Bible says, but why don't you follow my example? Lead by example will be something that's important. The other thing is, a leader handles conflict wisely. Like now there's a conflict, and he knows how to handle it. There's a conflict between the rich and the poor. There's a conflict between Israelites and the neighbors. Each one of them he handles. And conflict resolution is one of the most important requirements for it, because your people collide. And if not your people, you yourself will collide with a competing organization. How do you handle it? It's important to learn from Nehemiah. You must have a cool heart. Don't act emotionally. Get the real facts. Then confront people. Don't just talk behind their back. And that way you'll be able to sort out. But I think that as we finish, we are learning from him what he told Sanballat. He says, we, the Israelites, will build the wall. You will not have any part of it. I'm asking you the question. Do you understand these leadership requirements? Do not involve wicked people in your project because they are gifted. Do not involve wicked people in your project because